Hey everybody, how you doing? Jamion back at you here again on Motivated Matters this December 13th. I hope everybody's doing well this Monday, that you're in a happy space. Happy Monday, y'all. You know I love these Monday moments with you all as we continue to talk about vulnerability. If you didn't get a chance, go back to last week's video. We talk about what it means to be vulnerable. How are you vulnerable? What are some of those areas that you're vulnerable in? It's just an introduction to a series of conversations that we're going to have about being vulnerable. And I'm really digging this topic, digging it so much. I'm really just like starting to just digest as much information as I can. And I continue to read this book, Pshycho Cybernetics. I've also picked up another book that a very dear friend of mine gave to me, You Are Your Best Thing. Both of these books is just amazing, y'all. I'm on this chapter in Pshycho Cybernetics, and it just so happens to start talking about vulnerability and being vulnerable. And then I'm picking up this other book, You Are Your Best Thing, and it's talking about vulnerability as well, but in a completely different context, but they come together so nicely. And I'm going to share with you some of those things over the upcoming weeks, but we're going to continue to talk about vulnerability. I can't wait to continue to talk about this conversation. So the first question I asked you guys, are you vulnerable? Did you do your homework? Did you even think about it? Are you vulnerable? I've taken some time to really think about, am I vulnerable? I think like I'm vulnerable in certain areas in my life, but holistically, I feel like I'm a pretty solid dude. I feel like my self-esteem and self-confidence are at a level where I believe I can coach others to get to where I am and some of the things that I do to make sure it's intact. So think about that first question. Are you vulnerable? When you think about that question, I want you to think about what Maxwell Maltz talks about in Pshycho Cybernetics. He says, vulnerability and self-esteem have this inverse relationship. That's why it's so important for us to talk about this. He says, the more vulnerability you have emotionally, the lower your self-esteem is. Think about that. The more vulnerable you are emotionally, the lower your self-esteem. And conversely, if you think about it, the less vulnerable you are, the more confidence and self-esteem you have. So we're just going to park it right here. I don't want to give you guys too much because this thing is like an onion, y'all. We're going to keep peeling it back and keep peeling it back, but we're going to park it right here. Think about the first one. The more vulnerable you are emotionally, the lower the self-esteem and self-confidence you have. Let's think about it. Think about some people in your life or maybe in your family. They're extremely vulnerable. And when I mean that, everything impacts them. If somebody says something negative to them, they spiral into this area where it's just like, oh, woe is me. Or if something didn't go well at work or that day or in their relationship, woe is me. And they just start to become this person that everything impacts their life in a negative way. They become very much pessimistic all the time. They're always looking at the glass as half empty, versus half full. You know anybody like that? The more vulnerable you are emotionally, the lower your levels of self-esteem. The next one we'll talk about, conversely, we talked about the less vulnerable you are emotionally, the more self-esteem, the higher your self-esteem and self-confidence are. Think about it. If you're not so vulnerable emotionally, it means that you've built yourself up in certain areas where certain things don't bother you. So what? You understand that everybody's not gonna like me. And I'm not going to satisfy everybody, nor am I going to live my life putting that pressure on top of me to make sure that I do. That's somebody that's really in touch with who they are. Their self-esteem and self-confidence are at a level where these little things, they don't bother me. It's kind of like the little baby brother that's kicking on the baby brother, trying to poke at him. And the bigger brother is like, what? I don't even feel you touching me, right? This is how you have to think about levels and areas of vulnerability that you have. think about it, y'all. I think about some of the bosses that I've had in my professional career. I think about some of the ones that were really very, very vulnerable. They came off as very vulnerable, and it showed. They were constantly, looking at things in a negative light, or they were constantly trying to control something because they were living in fear. And then everybody around them was living in fear because they were. Versus I've had bosses in the past where they just seemed like everything was just chill and calm. And even if we were in a tornado or a fire, we would come out and everything would be okay because how he or she conducted themselves. They had very high levels of self-esteem and self-confidence, and it showed. It showed in their leadership. Can you think about people that way? I've had some horrible bosses, y'all. I mean horrible. Everybody that's a boss just because they perform well doesn't mean they're a good boss. How often do people get promoted that don't know how to manage or really inspire and motivate people? But that's another conversation. I just want to park this right here because these concepts, these conversations are going to build on each other in such an elegant way. I can't wait to share it with you, but I want you all to think about, do you think about your vulnerability? Do you feel as though you're very vulnerable when it comes to your emotions, or do you feel as though not so much? Let's answer that question. We'll keep talking about it in the next round, y'all. I love this topic. I hope you enjoy it too. Check it out. Share it with your tribe. We're continuing our efforts to build on self-esteem and self-confidence. We got coaching classes coming up in Q1. We've got some discounts coming up for the holiday season for those that are interested in spending 6 weeks with me to help work on your self-esteem and self-confidence. Can't wait to see you all again. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy the holiday period that's coming up, y'all. Make sure it's happy. Make sure I see you next time, next Monday. Take care, everybody.